Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 52nd part of What If Deku Can't Stop Adopting Kids. Hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 277, Connections. Oki was reading a book he'd gotten from the library when he heard a knock at the door. "Yo," Fu said from the other side. "Can I come in?" Oki sighed and set down his book and went to unlock the door. "Sure." Fu entered and took a seat on one of the chairs. "Thanks. What do you want?" Oki asked, his tone indicating just how eager he was to get this over with. "Nothing much, just want to talk," Fu said casually, as he looked around at the room. It was practically barren. No decorations of anything of the like to speak of. "Not a fan of posters?" "Afraid I might eat them," Oki said. "I don't keep things I don't need. Always end up eating them in my sleep. Do you know how many pillows I had to replace?" "That's fair, I guess," Fu said. "Then you should probably go outside more." "I'm not really an outside kinda guy," Oki told him. "Or a people kinda guy." "Is that because you're concerned you're gonna hurt everyone around you?" Fu asked. "Or is it because you feel so disgusting you don't think you deserve to be around them?" Oki froze, with a very deer-in-the-headlights look in his eyes. And the clamps around his body trembled. "You know, I can't really feel most things. At least not like everyone else. It's all muted." Fu explained. "But hunger? That's not muted. It's worse. Sure, I don't feel the pain. But that empty feeling, that need to put something into your mouth. It's so powerful, it's like it's got a claw on your brain. You really do know what it's like," Oki said. "Back before I met Dad, it was hard to get meat." Fu continued. "And when I got too low, I'd lose control of myself. My mind just shut off, and my body moved on its own, looking for any meat in sight to scarf down. And I mean, any meat. It ended badly sometimes. Some people got hurt. I don't have to worry about it anymore, because I get plenty to eat, but I still hate the thought of it. Eating people, living people, is just disgusting." "Then how are you, around people?" Oki asked, looking at him almost desperately. "Doesn't it feel wrong?" "Sometimes. I just don't think about it most of the time." Fu shrugged. "Unfortunately, that's not really an option for you, is it? But honestly, you don't really have to worry about hurting people here. They're all way too strong. If you tried, you'd get tackled and knocked out faster than you can say om nom nom. But if you don't trust that, stick close to me. It doesn't matter if you take a bite out of me, so it should be fine. Beats hanging around here all depressed." Oki considered it but seemed hesitant. "You want to know something interesting," Fu said. "Mr. Akira told me about something called exposure therapy. The more you're around something, the better you get at handling it. Kind of like how you get better at things the more you do them. So if you go around people more, you'll get better at resisting the urge." "Is that true?" Oki asked, unsure if he could trust that. "Really," Fu told him. "And if you stay in here, all you're going to do is damage your mind. Loneliness is the mind's greatest enemy after all. And you need your brain in tip-top shape, otherwise, you're gonna give in to that hunger." Oki thought about it. He was far from comfortable with the idea, but at the same time, he didn't love his current plan either. Fu seemed to know what he was talking about, so maybe he could trust him. "All right. So, what do you want to do outside? How about we just go for a walk?" Fu shrugged. "We don't have to do too much too fast. So if things get too hard, or you feel like you need to eat something right now, just tell me. Or anyone else really. We all know what it's like to be afraid of hurting people, and that's why we're all here. And we all want to help each other, including you. Remember that. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX patted the boy on the head. She was currently watching over a coloring session in the art room. Tenko smiled as Mina ruffled his hair. He liked the Midoriya Foundation. His first few weeks here had been in kind of a haze. But at least they let him be depressed without yelling at him like, "Nope. Not thinking about it." And after he started going out and doing stuff again, it was so much fun. Pool parties whenever he wants. Running through the woods. Petting Fuku's bear whose fur reminded him of his old. Nope. And no one even laughed at him when he said he wanted to be a hero. They didn't beat him either. Like his dead dad did. Tenko sniffled as tears rolled down his cheeks. He tried to hold them in but to no avail. "Oh sweetheart," Mina said as she wrapped her arms around the poor boy, who quickly embraced her in return. As Mina comforted the boy, Kyoku watched the two of them, not saying a word, just yet. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Mina had offered to walk him back, but Tenko refused. He'd embarrassed himself enough by crying out of nowhere. "What's wrong with me? Why am I such a baby?" Tenko thought as he sniffled. "Tenko! Ha!" Tenko turned behind him and saw Kyoko approaching him. "Come with me," Kyoko said, grabbing Tenko's arm and started dragging him away. "Ha! Wait, where are we going?" Tenko asked as Kyoko continued to take him away. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX support group, Kei said. Ha? Tenko repeated. Kyoko had taken him to a mostly empty room, with a bunch of chairs formed into a circle. In those chairs were Kei, Kyoko, Fuku, Fuai, Inu, as well of course himself. All of you have had bad parents, and you just can't get over it like everyone else, Kei said. And that's okay. You should never feel bad about feeling bad. You can't help how you feel sometimes, and that doesn't make you weak or pathetic. It just makes you human. And so in these meetings, we're gonna try to help you guys out. Let's start by telling each other our stories, and why we're here, so we can understand each other. Who wants to go first? Kyoko raised her hand. Kyoko then. Kei said. Okay. My name is Kyoko. My parents never paid any attention to me. And sometimes they just completely forget about me. Kyoko admitted. And anytime they would try to get them to notice me, they'd get mad and punish me. Sometimes they would even not feed me for a while. They never loved me, and they never would, never, I know that. But I just can't stop being angry about it. When I see other happy families, I get jealous, even though I have a happy family now. And it's just so frustrating. Ugh. Fuku patted the girl on the back, as she took a second to calm down after getting worked up. It's okay, Kyoko, just breathe. Thank you for sharing, Kyoko, Kei said. Anyone else? Inu raised her hand. I guess I'll go. My daddy wasn't a good man. He abandoned our big brother, and he didn't really take care of us much. Sometimes we'd have to work to feed ourselves. And I don't think he hugged any of us once. And eventually, he just left us. But I don't hate him. I always wanted to like him. I used to defend him when my sisters would speak bad about him. But I know I was wrong. Even now sometimes I wish he'd come back and say he's sorry. Thank you, Inu, Kei said. You See, can I go? Fuhai asked sheepishly. After Kei nodded, he continued. I woke up. And I heard mommy got rid of me. It wasn't really me, it was Fu, but that still really hurts. It hurts a lot. Mommy was so nice and I loved her so much. Why did she get rid of me? Fuhai broke down into tears, and both Fuku and Kei went to hug and comfort him. I want mommy. I miss her. Fuhai sobbed, his tears forming into streams worthy of his family name. It's okay. It's okay. Kay assured him calmly. It's okay, cry as much as you need. And so he did. Fuhai continued to cry for quite some time, until eventually he just ran out of steam. There you go, buddy. You feeling a bit better now? Kay asked him. Fuhai sniggled. A little. Great. Kay cheered as she went back to her seat. Remember everyone, don't be afraid to cry. It's not something to be ashamed of, and it can make you feel better. Okay, who wants to share next? I guess I'll go next. Fuku said, taking a deep breath as she prepared herself. My dad was an awful man. He basically named me disappointment when he found out I wasn't born a boy. He tried to force me to be some kind of perfect bride to marry off to some rich guy. He'd yell, and scream, and hit me if I didn't do well enough. He made me into this scared little thing that has a hard time leaving her room. And I can't even call Mr. Midoriya dad, because when I think of what a dad is, I think of my old one, and Mr. Midoriya is so much better than him. Kyoku patted her on the back. Thanks, Fuku, Kay said, before turning to Tenko. Tenko, do you want to share? Tenko hesitated and looked at Kyoku, who gave him a thumbs up. Well, why not, I guess? Tenko sighed. So, my family they were nice to me. Most of the time. But, whenever I said I wanted to be a hero, Dad would get really angry. He'd yell, and scream, and beat me. And no one would do anything about it. I didn't give up though. I went out, and tried to help people, and every time I came home, Dad knew somehow. And he'd beat more and more. It'd get worse every time. Mom would get upset. Ask him to stop. But he never did, she never made him stop. And then, one day I woke up, and now they're all dead. All of them. My dad, my mom, my grandparents, my sister, my dog. I should be sad, right? And I am, but I'm not also. They were nice to me. They even loved me, I think, but they let him hurt me. He beat me up, and they did nothing. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Why didn't they help me? Once again tears rolled down his cheeks. He half-heartedly tried to keep them in, but then Kyoku came and patted him on the back. Let it out, buddy, that's what we're here for, Kyoku said. We won't judge, Inu reassured him. I just don't know how to feel. Tenko sobbed. I'm so confused, and it hurts. After that, Tenko cried for a bit longer, and he calmed down again. Feeling just a tiny bit better. Thank you for sharing, Tenko. Kay praised him. All of us have similar problems. Even if some things are different. Kyoku said. So all of us know how you feel. Just remember that you are never alone. We're all going to try and understand our feelings and get through them, together. Tenko felt a bit warm at that statement. Sure, he still didn't have answers, but at the very least he didn't feel stupid or isolated because of it. He really did love the Midoriya Foundation. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX He was currently at his desk, in front of his laptop, which was facilitating a video call between him and none other than Melissa Shield. Same. I've heard quite a bit about you. Melissa chuckled. As a quirkless person, it's pretty much impossible not to hear about you. I can imagine. Izuku chuckled in return, albeit apologetically. Sorry about that. No worries, Melissa said. And please call me Melissa. In that case, please call me Izuku, Izuku told her. Now, I'm sure you've been busy given the recent events that occurred during the expo. Melissa sighed, her expression immediately showing several shades of distress. That's an understatement of the century. Putting aside my own personal distress, my father's betrayal has caused many here to distrust me, including the people funding my projects. If it weren't for Uncle Might vouching for me, I don't think I'd be able to do anything around here. I guess that leans into what I wanted to talk about, Izuku said. I've heard much about your work. Your understanding of quirks surpasses many of our own scientists, and they have access to chaos energy research. I would love it if you would consider working with us. I assure you your father's actions would have no effect on your treatment, and you would get access to resources and research that could greatly expand your capabilities. Melissa pondered the offer for a few moments. In reality, there's pretty much no practical reason for me not to accept that offer. I'm just a little hesitant about leaving the island. Completely understandable, Izuku said. It's difficult to leave a familiar place. I would know. I rarely leave my own house. To be fair, that might be more because of the assassins than anything else. Melissa pointed out. Surprisingly, I go outside more nowadays than before the assassins started coming, Izuku said. Anyways, this offer is always on the table, so if you want to accept, just call me. Thank you. Both for your offer and for being so understanding. Melissa said. One more thing, Izuku said. I feel I should tell you that we have contacted your father with a similar offer, with some stipulations given his previous actions. Melissa frowned. Is that so? Yes, he was able to directly affect the quirk factor without negative consequences, in a way unseen by anyone, Izuku said. Could you imagine what he could do with access to chaos energy? Under proper supervision, of course. You understand how dangerous that technology is, right? Melissa asked. We all had to go through hell to keep that crown thing from getting out into the underground. I can't tell you how relieved I was when it broke. Izuku sighed. I've said this before, I'll probably keep saying it for as long as I live. The problem with dangerous technological advancements is that you can't stop them. The ability to learn and create is exclusive to no one. Even if David Shield never makes another quirk-boosting device, someone, somewhere, at some point, will. And if that's the case, I want that technology to be in our hands, rather than someone less equipped to guard it, or someone who would misuse it immediately. If we understand what it's made of, we can figure out if someone is trying to create one illegally. If we understand how it works, we can understand how to counter it. Do you see what I'm saying? Melissa took a moment to let that sink in. You're right. It's just scary to think that something like that may become more common. Even Uncle might struggle against it. Of that, we can agree. Izuku shook his head. I fear the quirk singularity, or perhaps simply, the power singularity, might not be as far away as we thought. I may just need to build a stronger world to handle it. I guess that's all we can really do, isn't it? Melissa said, giving a half-hearted laugh. Chapter 278, Minetta. You could call Minetta many things. Most of them not nice. But an idiot wasn't one of them. Although that may seem surprising to many, anyone who was forced to stay around him for a while figured out the small boy was actually very intelligent. And once you figured that out, everything about him made less sense. Why act the way he does when anyone with a brain could tell that would only drive women away from him? Make them despise him? And what was with the design for his hero costume? How could he not realize that the Great Bull thing looks like a diaper? Was he really so driven by his hormones that his brain stopped working? No. Minetta knew very well what effect his actions had. How it made people look at him. But they were looking at him. He didn't even reach most people's field of view, and yet whenever he entered a room everyone knew it. Everyone looked at him. Acknowledged him. They even had a fun dynamic going on. He'd do something stupid and perverted, and the girls would beat the crap out of him. A win-win scenario. At least that's what he assumed, because if the girls really wanted him expelled they could have done so by now, especially with someone like Momo on their side, so the only explanation for why he was still at UA was that they enjoyed beating him up. Now someone might argue, Minetta, won't this ruin your reputation? Ruin any chance of actually finding a girlfriend? Finding love? And to that, Minetta would simply point out that he was a short, ugly boy with sticky purple balls growing from his head. There's no improving your reputation when you look like this. There's no finding love. That's all fairy tale crap. Ugly people truly were the bottom rung of this world when it came to love. No matter what quirk you had or didn't have, so long as you were at least a little attractive, there was hope for you romantically. Ugly people didn't even want to get together with other ugly people either. They, like everyone else, pinned from the beautiful. Love had never been an option for Minetta. That was decided at birth. People already looked at him strangely when he was young, and it got worse once balls started growing out of his head. It was a novelty for a while. They laughed at him, he did some silly tricks with his new quirk, and they laughed some more, he was like a clown. It was fun. But it didn't last long. The novelty stopped being novel, and soon Minetta started being excluded from the rest of the class. When he asked why they wouldn't play with him anymore, they would answer something like, "Because you look ugly." This didn't change as he got older. If anything, it got worse, as it became clear just how Minetta was growing. Or rather, how he wasn't. Being short by itself wasn't the problem. Short people, even people as short as Minetta, could still be attractive. If they were cute. Minetta was not. He'd never really been cute as a kid, and that didn't change. So his being short only added to how unattractive he was. It also gave the impression of a lacking in a certain area. Not that it was a wrong impression. And so people looked away from him. Assuming they saw him at all. All the way up until his last year of middle school, people just kinda ignored him. Of course, he'd still try his hardest to make friends. Maybe even a girlfriend. He'd look up guides online on how to befriend people, how to endear yourself, how to get people to look past your looks. Nothing worked. And any attempt he made to socialize had been brushed off. Occasionally he'd get mad fun of and bullied, but never anything long-term. They'd typically just go back to ignoring him pretty quickly. His parents weren't much better. They weren't the worst parents, but they made it pretty clear they were disappointed in how their son turned out. As such, whenever he was around, they typically weren't. Eventually, Minetta realized the way of the world. He realized that any attempt to become something more than just an unpleasant sight would be pointless. In denial, he decided to become a pro-hero. If he saved lives, people would have to acknowledge him. Right? This wasn't true, of course. Even heroes like Gang Orca, who had done so much good for this world, had never once had a girlfriend. In fact, people had put him in the top 3 on the list of heroes that look like villains. The fact that such an insensitive and horrible list existed and everyone was just okay with it, showed how much looks affected your place in society. With the fact that the top heroes in the popularity polls were always the attractive ones, added to it. And yet, he still decided to become a hero. Because what else was he going to do? It was his best shot at getting noticed. Then, something changed. Some boys wanted to play a prank on him. They said they'd let him be a part of their group if he stole a pair of panties from the girls' locker room. It was a lie, of course. Deep down Minetta knew that, but he was desperate. Of course, he did as they said. And of course, he was caught. Not immediately. He'd managed to hide when the girls came in and stayed hidden long enough for them to start undressing. By the time they'd found him, he'd gotten to see something that his young, extremely frustrated brain would never let him forget. But that wasn't the only positive to come from that experience. From that point on, Minetta had been branded a pervert. People would look at him with disdain, bully him regularly, and come up with new insulting nicknames for him. Hell, his parents had even paid attention to him for a short while, yelling about how much of a disappointment he was. They acknowledged that Minetta Minru existed. From that point on, things became clear. If wanted to get noticed, he'd have to make sure they could not ignore him. And so was created the Minetta everyone knows and hates, but knows nonetheless. Sure, Minetta knew that what he did, morally speaking, wasn't the greatest. Sometimes he'd wonder if he went too far, committed to a bit of a smidge too much. But if the world was gonna be so unkind to him, why should he be hesitant to sling a tiny bit of unkindness back? Besides, he was gonna be a hero. He was gonna save lives. That more than balanced out his karma or whatever. He'd almost call himself a good person, almost. When he got UA, he found more of the same. Sure, 1A were all good people, but whether you were a good person or not didn't matter. The rule of attractiveness was present in everyone. When the girls talk about boys, they talk about people like Todoroki and Ida. He'd never heard them talk about Kota, Shoji, or him. While Minetta was sure these girls wouldn't make fun of him for his appearance, they would ignore him. Like everyone else would. And so he continued his antics. Soon, all of UA knew of Minetta the pervert. His perversion had even netted him something like a friend, in fellow pervert Kaminari. Minetta was doing about as well as someone like him could be. For the uglies in this world, it was be ignored, or be despised, and Minetta would gladly choose the second option. However, suddenly, there was a new option. Midoriya Izuku had harnessed incredible technology. He was even capable of completely changing his gender as if he was always born as a woman. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. He knew it. Midoriya was a secretive person, especially when it came to his technology. So if he was willing to show them this, then he certainly had more impressive and powerful appearance-changing technology hidden away. This would be his key. The key to a better life. Now he just had to get that key. Ugh. Izuku groaned. Minetta and Izuku were meeting in his office, Sue standing by Izuku's side, ready and alert as always. Getting a meeting with Izuku wasn't hard. He still had his phone number from when he was helping around the foundation, and since Midoriya was a saint, he agreed to meet him without needing much convincing. Even despite his busy schedule. Honestly, he really vibed with Midoriya. Beyond just him being the nicest person he ever met, Izuku was someone who was also screwed over from birth. Even worse than he was, honestly. He'd seen Izuku fight with his temporary quirk, and even though Shina helped him adjust to it, Minetta had no doubt that Izuku would still be able to use it extremely effectively without that assistance. Given how incredibly intelligent he was, and how good he was at figuring out quirks. He helped Uraraka invent full cowling after all. Minetta had also seen what Izuku looked like as a girl. And the word, attractive, was not enough to describe them. And that wasn't even as an adult. Minetta could only imagine how hot an adult female Izuku would be. If Izuku had been born as a girl, with a quirk, they'd be destined for top 10 hero status. Of that, there was no doubt in his mind. And yet, he had been born a guy and quirkless. It was as if he was nerfed by God. Although with that said, he was still capable of becoming the most powerful man on Earth, despite this. And appearance-wise he wasn't bad at all. A solid 6 or 7. Putting all that aside, Minetta had just finished telling him the full details about the Yonda blackmail incident. I can't believe Fu would do something like that under my nose. Izuku sighed. I'm sorry that Yonda did that to you, but I have to wonder, why are you telling me about this now? Your daughter blackmailed me. I want compensation. Minetta said, sweating bullets, hoping this would work. Compensation? Izuku took a look at Minetta, noticing how nervous he was. And what do you want? Minetta pulled a piece of paper, unfolded it, and handed it to Izuku. Izuku took it and quickly read over it. His eyes widened as he did. I know you can do it, Minetta said, forcing up the courage he needed. You have the tech. Izuku took a moment, before responding, giving Minetta a serious look. The technology required for this is still being worked on and tested. In theory, we could do this for you, but there would be consequences. What kind? Minetta gulped, hoping they wouldn't be so bad. The process would make unpredictable alterations to your brain, Izuku said. While your memories would stay intact, parts of your personality, the way you think and perceive things, and even your sexuality might change. I'm fine with that, Minetta said, breathing a sigh of relief. I mean, let's face it, no one would be upset if my personality changed. Not even you. And my sexuality, worth it. You're not afraid of your mind changing on a fundamental level? Izuku asked, looking at the boy with a bit of concern. It'll almost be like being a new person. That's what I want. Minetta shouted almost desperately. Please. Izuku continued to look concerned as he thought about this for a while. I can clearly see that this is important to you. And I don't have any real reason to refuse. However, I will need to ask your parents for permission. PFT, they won't care. Minetta scoffed. They stopped giving a damn about me a while ago. And I'm going to need you to get therapy, Izuku said. Because it's very obvious that you need it. Fine. Minetta agreed, looking very hopeful. I accept. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX class. Apparently he's getting some surgery from the Midoriya Foundation. Whatever that means. Why does that sentence give me chills? Jiro cringed. You think you can surgically get rid of perversion? Toru asked. If anyone can, it's Midoriya, Su said. Still. I wonder what Midoriya could possibly want with Minetta. And why would it involve surgery? Maybe he flirted with Uraraka one too many times and Midoriya decided to take his balls. Mina snickered. Achiko rolled her eyes. Grow up, Mina. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX table. Ugh, what do you want, Chargedolt? Jiro asked, raising her ear jacks threateningly. If it's something pervy, you're walking away from here with 2 more holes. Nah, just wanted to ask you girls a question, Kaminari said casually. You see, I was thinking about Minetta after what happened in class. And I thought of something. Couldn't you girls just get him expelled if you really wanted to? I mean, I don't want you to, but that seems like something you girls would want because he's a bit much. So why don't you? Pretty much all the girls sighed, their faces revealing a bit of sadness and frustration. Well, at first we just thought UA would do something about it, Mina said. I mean, it just seemed kinda obvious that one of the teachers would do something about him. Eventually we figured out they weren't going to, for reasons I don't understand. But by that point, we learned a bit more about Minetta. Momo added. Namely that he's doing what he's doing, mostly for attention. First, there's the fact that no one in real life acts the way Minetta does. Sue pointed out. Maybe in an anime or something, but in real life the only people who'd pull stunts like that are absolute morons. Which Minetta isn't. Speaking of him not being a moron. Anyone with half a brain would realize that doing what Minetta does isn't gonna get him any girls. Mina said. Second is that he always gets caught, Toru said. Literally every time he tries something, he gets caught. Almost like he wants to get caught. And the last part that tipped us off was that he never tries to fight back whenever we punish him. Achiko pointed out. Minetta's not weak. If he tried, he could probably at least escape from us depending on the situation. But he just takes it. Like he wants it. Given all that, we've come to the conclusion that Minetta's antics are just extremely desperate attention-seeking attempts. Momo frowned. And so we didn't get rid of him. Most out of pity. It's hard to be super angry at him, once you realize how utterly pathetic he is, Jiro said. I mean, I'm still mad, but I didn't feel as mad as I would be, and I just don't care enough to get him expelled in the end. And after that, we just kinda got used to him. Toru shrugged. Desensitized and all that. Honestly, it's not a healthy way to go about things. Both for our sake and Minetta's. Azui said. I've been trying to plan some kind of intervention, but that'd require me to know more about him, which means spending time with him, which he does not make easy. UAS, complete lack of anything when it comes to Minetta is extremely concerning. Momo sighed. I have half the mind to make a complaint about their inactivity. Although it does give us the benefit of dealing with situations as we see fit. Okay. I kinda get it. Kaminari said as he pondered that. So Minetta was an attention seeker, yeah, that made sense. Even to Kaminari, Minetta's actions seemed extreme to say the least. Which is why he didn't step in when the girls decided to punish him for his actions. But it made him wonder. If Minetta only wanted attention, could he have done something about that? Could he have perhaps been a better friend? Chapter 279, Beauty. Alright class, as you know Minetta hasn't been in class for the last week, Aizawa said as class began. However, now they will finally be returning to class. Although you might not recog dash. Suddenly the door opened, and in stepped a young woman. She had long purple hair that almost looked like cotton candy, and curled in a way that kind of formed ball shapes along her hair. But her hair, nice as it was likely the last thing everyone was looking at. Because the girl looked like she came straight from a magazine. Perfect, almost unrealistic figure. Smooth, unblemished skin. An attractive face. And was very gifted in certain areas. She wore a UA uniform, although it appeared to have been altered to be ever so slightly more provocative. Hey guys. Long time no see. The girl said in a peppy voice. Giving off an air of positivity and confidence. Everyone went silent, their mouths slacked open in shock. Aizawa sighed. Yeah. As you can see, Minetta has gone through a pretty drastic transformation thanks to Midoriya. Drastic is a big fucking understatement, what the actual fuck? Jiro shouted out. Minetta, I had no idea you wanted to be a woman, This is a real desire you have and not just some very extreme attempt to see us changing in the locker room? Momo asked. I apologize, but I do have to check. Yeah, I get it. Don't worry though, I'm not gonna do anything. Minetta said casually. I'm not even changing in the same room as you guys. Normally in situations like this, we would have her change with the rest of the girls, but given previous history and taking into account the feelings of the rest of the girls, we thought that would be a bad idea. And so Minetta will be changing in a separate room for the time being. Aizawa said. I could still change with the guys if you want, Minetta said in a teasing tone. But also in a way that dictated she was completely serious. That's an even worse idea. Aizawa. Anyway, from now on Minetta will be going as Minetta Minerva, so take that as you will. Now sit down and let's start class already. I apologize Aizawa-sensei, but are we not going to address the grievous violations Minetta has made by altering her uniform in such a way? Ida shouted, chopping the air as usual. I was wondering when you were gonna point that out. Achiko chuckled. Come on Ida, don't be such a stick in the mud. Minetta said before raising her arms. Here, touch me boobs, it'll help. Yeah, that's definitely Minetta, Toru said, sounding slightly amused as she looked at Ida's stunned and outraged face. Can I touch him? Kaminari asked. Sure. Come here. Minetta invited. I don't get fucking paid enough for this shit, Aizawa swore under his breath as he massaged his temples. There will be no fondling in class, everyone shut up, and let's get the lesson started already. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX to discuss some things with Minetta. They all approached the table Minetta was sitting at, and found it full of strangers. Plenty of girls, surprisingly quite a few guys, and Kaminari. What the hell, did the Midoriya Foundation just give you a whole new body? One of the girls asked as she touched Minetta's boobs. Nah, it's mostly the same stuff. And it's all organic. Minetta explained pridefully. Can't say how they did it though, contracts and stuff. Are they gonna make this available to people? Asked another girl. Because I would kill to get a look like this. Dude, my girlfriend should get a look like this. Then maybe she'd stop asking me if she looks fat in everything. Said one guy. How expensive would that be? Asked another girl. Sorry to burst your bubble, but this is a super exclusive thing, Minetta said. Don't want anyone stealing their tech. And so until threats like the MLA are done and gone, none of this is going public. Ugh. I hate those stupid quirkist assholes. One girl groaned. Why can't they all just drop dead, so the Midoriya Foundation can just give us all the cool stuff? Excuse me, Momo said as she and the one girls approached the table. Minetta, could we talk? XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX where they could talk in peace. First off, I wanna apologize. Minetta said. I did some things, okay, a lot of things, that were not cool. I didn't want to, okay, I absolutely did want to, but I wouldn't have done it if it weren't for my situation. Your situation? Jiro scoffed. Yeah. Being ugly. Minetta admitted with a sigh. I mean, let's face it, I look like someone made a disgusting fusion of man and grape. Several girls were about to open their mouths when Momo put up her hand to stop them. Before you continue, you bury yourself with your own words. Why don't you just give us a complete, comprehensive explanation on why you did what you did? Minetta shrugged. Doubt that'll make you any less angry, but sure. I owe it to you, I guess. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX story. Momo in particular had gotten a migraine from listening to all of that. Okay. Let's break this down. So the cause of all of this was body image problems, loneliness leading to a distorted worldview, and jumping to conclusions. What are you talking about? My worldview is fine. It's just ugly people are all destined to be alone and forgotten, or utterly despised. Minetta said casually. I was just desperate to stop feeling alone, so I figured being hated by everyone wasn't so bad. But now I'm not ugly anymore, so I don't have to worry about it. The fact that you see no problem with that is genuinely scary, Azui said. Minetta, we wouldn't have just ignored you all year if you didn't do all that gross stuff. You could have just acted like a normal person and we could have been friends. And I'm sure you believe that, Minetta said with a smile. But face it. People don't look at or think about ugly things. It's just not in our nature. I'd have faded into the background like I never even existed, and you'd forget about me completely. I'm not saying it's your fault, it's just how the world works. No, it's... Momo took a deep breath, trying to put aside her utter frustration. Putting aside hypotheticals, factually speaking there are plenty of, not conventionally attractive men who get married. Some even get married to very conventionally attractive women. Minetta sighed and shook her head. Okay. Name one. Name one ugly couple or a couple with one ugly partner. Then see if the couple is only together because one or both of them get something out of it. Like money, or fame, or something. That's, Mina thought about it. She knew plenty of celebrity couples, but pretty much all of them were both attractive, or one was clearly using the other for some kind of benefit. Minetta, you have to have seen at least one couple like this somewhere, Toru said. On the internet, in real life, or anywhere. Well, putting aside the photoshopped ones. You're right, and I can't imagine what behind-the-scenes things caused that to happen. Blackmail, pity, etc. Minetta said. And of course, there's some people you'd normally consider ugly, but fit into a specific niche. But for someone that looked like me, there was absolutely no way I was finding love with scumming tactics. And even I wouldn't sink that low. Ugh. The girls groaned again in frustration. Minetta, there is no doubt a preference in this world, towards attractive people. I will not deny that. Momo admitted. But it's not as if those who don't meet that standard are doomed to be alone. Well, yeah, because once Midoriya makes this stuff public, we can finally just get rid of ugliness altogether, Minetta said as she looked over her new body once again. It's like talking to a brick wall. Toru groaned. On a different note. What happened to your quirk? Jiro asked, pointing to Minetta's hair. Your balls are gone. Minetta chuckled. Yeah, they are. That's not what I meant, jackass. Jiro groaned, rolling her eyes. I'm asking what happened to your quirk. Minetta smirked and held up her hands, showing them to the girls. Revealing that on his fingers were little purple spots. Suddenly one of them inflated, growing into one of Minetta's usual sticky balls. Ta-da! Introducing the new and improved pop-off for the new and improved Minetta. Minetta revealed as she dropped the ball to the ground. She then grew balls from all of her fingers and dropped them. Not only does it not mess up my hair, but I also do this. Minetta made another great ball, but this time, it didn't stop growing when it reached its normal size. Instead, it kept growing rapidly, until it reached the size of a beach ball, and then stopped when it reached the size of a beanbag chair. I can make them bigger too. She dropped the ball on the ground and it immediately stuck. The bigger they are, the stickier they are too. Touch this baby, and you're not moving for the rest of the day. Minetta said as she smacked the ball playfully. Plus I can still bounce off them and stuff. Although using my quirk too much still makes me bleed a whole bunch. Oh, looks like it's time for class. We gotta go. Minetta said as she started to leave. Wait, Momo said, causing Minetta to stop and turn around. We're gonna be late if we drag this on. Minetta sighed. I'll take responsibility, Momo said. I just want a bit more clarification. Why is it that you decided to become a woman? And what do you think happens now? Do you think you'll be completely forgiven for what you did? Do you think you'll suddenly be swarmed with friends? And find a girlfriend with ease? I wanted to be as good looking as possible. To me, girls look better than guys. Every time I think about wanting to touch a pretty girl, I can just look down. Minetta said casually. As for what I expect, I hope you guys forgive me. I didn't expect it, I did do some crappy things after all. Although I'm already making a ton of new friends. I'm sure I'll get a girlfriend sooner or later. You'll get a girlfriend who wouldn't love you if you looked the way you did before. Momo pointed out. And you're okay with this? If I wasn't, I'd never find love. Minetta shrugged as she turned and walked away. Just the way the world works. As Minetta walked off, the other girls turned to each other. So, what do we do about this? Mina asked. We could just leave them to their own devices. I mean, technically it's none of our business what Minetta does with themselves, and since they said they're not going to perv on us anymore, we don't need to do anything about them. Azui pointed out. But it just feels so gross, Toru said. The way Minetta sees the world is just so twisted and warped. It feels wrong to just leave them like that. We tried to explain it to them. And we made zero progress. Jiro said. And I doubt our teachers are gonna be of any help. Achiko sighed. Let's leave her alone for now, Momo said, getting everyone's attention. I meant what I said. The world is biased towards those the populace deems as attractive. But that can be as much a bane as it is a boon. What Minetta wants is genuine connections. But once she realizes how many of her relationships become superficial and cheap, I wonder how her worldview will hold up. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Achiko plopped herself down on a park bench. After school, Izuku had sent her a text inviting her to meet him after school. And naturally, she accepted. She took out her phone and checked the time. She was 5 minutes early. Normally Izuku would be here already, Achiko said to herself. He's never not early to our meetups. Sorry, I'm late, said a familiar, feminine voice. Achiko looked up, and standing over her was Izuku, in his female form, in a high school girl uniform. Ah. Before you say anything, let me explain, Izuku said, red dusting his face, showing how clearly embarrassed he was. So remember the concert operation? Well, for that to work, I need the villains to come and attack me. But if I show up in public nowadays without a disguise, they'll probably think I'm trying to lure them in. But if my disguise is too good, then they still won't attack me. So I needed something that would still make it look like I'm disguising myself, but also will still let some people know it's me. And this form is the best suited for that. Oh. Okay, that makes sense, Achiko said, before giving him a concerned look. You look good. But, should you really be going out right now? What if the villains attack right now? Unlikely. Green hair and freckles, while not super common, aren't uncommon. And the feet aren't just going to start ambushing anything that even remotely looks like me. Which is a bit of a problem for my plans, Izuku explained. But if word gets around that a girl with green hair and freckles at the same age as Izuku Midoriya hangs around with Achiko Uraraka, a known friend of Izuku Midoriya, then people will start getting more suspicious. Oh, so that's why you wanted to hang out today, Achiko said, trying not to sound disappointed. Well, yeah. And hanging out with my best friend is something I'm always happy to do anyway, Izuku said, giving her a big smile. Achiko's face exploded into a blush. Why, yeah. Me too. Minetta was wrong. Appearances mattered in this world, that much was undeniable. But no matter what form Isuku took, Achiko was sure her feelings wouldn't change. Chapter 280, Family Outing. Reining Yig. As soon as the bell rang, Amai quickly packed up all of her things. She had to get this done quickly. She had a busy day today and she didn't want to waste a second. That she also didn't want to get caught in her classmates' weird antics. Hey Nagai, you wanna add your blood to the circle? One of her classmates asked her, as her other classmates cut their hands with a sacrificial dagger and added their blood to a pentagram they drew on the floor. No, sorry, I'm in a rush. Bye. Amai said as she ran out of the room as fast as her legs would carry her. The kid shrugged. Oh well. Bring out the flamethrower. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Hey kid, how was school? Sori asked. Good. My classmates are trying to summon the devil or something, so can we leave here as soon as possible please? Amai asked as politely as she could. Sure, let's go kid, Sori said as she opened the door to the limo, revealing Yami and Seikyo inside. Immediately Seikyo used her telekinesis to pick Amai up and sit her next to herself. Hello, mother. Amai's face immediately exploded into a fierce blush. Hi Seikyo. Hey Yami. Hi. Yami greeted with his usual unchanging expression. His eyes staring at her, causing her to blush even more. Sori closed the door and went up front, then the car started moving. So did you watch Witch Wars last night? Seikyo asked. Yeah, it was so good. That reveal for XRA was amazing. Although I did laugh at her name a bit. Amai admitted. It was rather, how do you say, on the nose, Seikyo said. I rolled my eyes a bit. But the episode was still amazing. I don't see the problem. Yami shrugged. Joke was fine. I'm glad you recommended it to me. I didn't hear anyone talking about it online, so I probably wouldn't have found it if you didn't tell me about it. Amai said. You really like witches, huh? Seikyo nodded. Magic is something that amazes me. It's cool, and beautiful, and powerful all at the same time. And it comes in so many different forms. And it gives me new ideas for what to do with my powers. Seikyo then held up her hands, and small fireworks burst in between them. Wow, Amai said, thoroughly impressed by Seikyo's little display. You know, you could always make your own magic stuff. Not in real life, but if you asked Ken, he could make any magic stuff you want come to life on screen. Seikyo thought about that. I don't know what I'd ask him to make. You can think about it, Yami told her. We have time. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Despite being located in a rather poor part of the city, the shelter was in pristine condition. Nothing too flashy, but it did stick out just a little compared to the surrounding area. The reason for this was that this homeless shelter was purchased and supported by the Midoriya Foundation. The kids got out of the limo, entered the building, and were met with an older woman. "Yami, Amai. It's so nice to see you again," the woman said as she saw them enter. "Oh, and who is this?" "This is Seikyo, I made her," Yami explained simply, as Seikyo gave a polite bow. "I'm fairly certain I won't understand anything even if I ask you to explain, so I'm just not going to accept that and try not to think about it," the lady said. "Anyway, I'm assuming you came to help too?" "That's right. Mother and Fa. I mean, Yami and Amai have been doing this for a while, so I wanted to try it out," Seikyo said. "I believe they call this a family outing." Gonna pretend like I didn't hear the mother and father part, she thought. "Well, I am the director, so I'll be in charge of you three today. It's nice to meet you. Now then, let's not waste any more time. There's much today and many people to help. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX property. Okay, well, only approved people could use their quirks. And fortunately, Seikyo was one of those people. Ha! Said one of the shelter volunteers as Seikyo unloaded all the supplies out of the truck with her telekinesis, while everyone else watched. Well, aren't we useless? Midoriyas. Am I right? One of them joked. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX wash dishes alongside Amai in the kitchen. Because when you tried using your quirk to wash dishes last time, you broke some, Yami said as he made some soup alongside the other cooks. Seikyo pouted. You could at least let me cook. The last time you cooked something, we had to kill it. Yami pointed out. I'm so sorry, Amai said, blushing intensely with embarrassment as she recalled her own cooking attempts. I'm so sorry. Seikyo raised an eyebrow, but for some reason felt it best not to ask. Here you go. Eat up. Amai said as she handed a happy candy to a man. Meanwhile, Yami and Seikyo did the same, handing people candies from bags that Amai had given them. A few hours later, it was getting late. The sun already getting ready to set, as the three of them left, going back into the limo. Well, that was fun, Amai said as they sat down and buckled in their seatbelts. Yami responded. Wasn't that just chores? Seikyo asked. Yeah, but we did it to help people. Amai pointed out. Doesn't that just make you feel good? I was made to do that, so it does. But I would rather help people the way Father intended. Seikyo said before holding up her fist and making it glow with energy. By getting rid of our enemies. I did make her for that, Yami confirmed. You know. Your speech has improved a bunch since we met Yami. Amai pointed out, looking at him proudly. I think that's really cool. And Seikyo, you were always really good at speaking. Even though you were just born, you might actually be better than me now that I think about it. I was created with that knowledge and knowledge on how to use that knowledge. So it's only natural, Seikyo said, with a prideful smile. Yami then started patting Seikyo on the head, and the girl silently leaned into it, enjoying the affection. Amai, feeling a bit left out, raised her hand to start patting Seikyo as well, but hesitated for a moment, as a feeling of doubt and uncertainty filled her for a second. But then Seikyo grabbed her hand, and placed it on her head, not so subletting, encouraging her to start petting. And so, Amai just decided to do so, taking some joy in Seikyo's delighted expression. XXXXX XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Seikyo and Amai stood outside the gates of a large house, holding signs and surrounded by a large group of people. "Mutants, not beasts! Mutants, not beasts!" shouted the people around them. Most of them were mutants, holding up signs as well. Aha! These people are trying to help other mutants by protesting. Amai said. So I want to help them. You don't have to worry about her safety, we have plenty of men watching over and guarding us. And I'm here. So we can protest as we please. Seikyo said, before turning her focus back onto the mansion. Go suck an egg, old man. Resign and wait for the Reaper to take you, stop bothering us. Sounds like your trash talk. Yami pointed out, much to Amai's embarrassment. Oh no, it does, Amai said, turning bright red. After the protest, the three headed back to Amai's house, where they quickly headed up to Amai's room and grabbed some controllers. Booting up Superhero Bash, Seikyo and Yami decided to go 2-against-1 on Amai. Game! The announcer shouted. Ugh! Curses! Mother, why are you so good at this? Seikyo growled as she clutched her controller. Ha! Sorry. I don't hold back. Get good. Amai taunted, giving Seikyo a cocky smile. Although, you two actually did make me try a little bit. You've got a talent for game, Seikyo, but you don't have experience. Growling. Father, we have lost 5 times in a row, how are you not frustrated? Seikyo asked, pouting as she did so. I just like spending time with you two. Yami shrugged. Even if I'm losing, playing with you two is really fun. Amai's face exploded into a massive blush as it had for the 1000th time today, and Seikyo just pouted harder. Father, it's hard to be upset when you say things like that. Seikyo complained. Yami set down his controller and got up. I'm going to get snacks. And with that, Yami exited the room, leaving the two of them alone. There were a few seconds of silence as the two of them came down from the post-game emotional rush. And then Seikyo spoke. Mom, do you love me? Amai froze, as her brain tried to figure out how to compute and respond to that. I really like you. Seikyo frowned. You always seem uncomfortable around me. Do you really hate me calling you mother? I don't hate it. I don't know how to react. I don't think I'm ready for that. Amai said with a big blush on her face. It's all just so weird. And so it makes me feel weird. I guess that makes sense. I'm not even a year old, and I can tell how weird this is. Seikyo sighed. Well, you don't need to see me as a daughter. So long as you see me as family. Then I guess that's fine. Is that okay with you? Amai felt a sense of relief fill her. Yeah, I'd like that. Seikyo smiled. Good. Now then, hug me. Chapter 281, Soul Searching. Project Successor. Midoriya Izuku is currently not immortal. As such, a common question that comes to everyone's mind is what would happen to the Midoriya Foundation if Midoriya Izuku were to perish. In the future, Midoriya simply plans to hand it off to his children. However, that is far into the future. Currently, if he were to die, the foundation would simply be handed over to his mother Midoriya Inko. But Mr. Midoriya is unsatisfied with this, as he has no wish to put that much pressure, responsibility, and above all else, danger, onto her. So he needs to find an alternative. But who could he trust with not only the most powerful company on earth, but also his beloved children? The answer, of course, is himself. The Fu incident has already told us that vestiges can be awakened, and form their own sentence separate from the original person they came from. And everyone has a vestige. Even the quirkless, such as Mr. Midoriya. As such, Mr. Midoriya plans for us to extract his vestige, and use it to create a potential successor. Perhaps even two, if possible. To be clear, Mr. Midoriya does not desire clones of himself, as he thinks that would cause issues if, or more likely, when the public found out. Or even if his own children found out. These beings would be created with Mr. Midoriya's soul, and as such they would possess not only his memories but many of his personality traits, being similar enough to where people would notice. However, they would possess numerous personality differences, just enough to distinguish them as their own people. This can be done by simply placing them in bodies different from Midoriya Izuku's. Both the Fu incident, and numerous cases from the New Initiative, have shown that altering a person's body can make even drastic alterations to a person's personality. They're still the same inside, but they've simply changed. Like when someone goes through a life-altering experience. The bodies would be made by taking Midoriya Izuku's DNA and massively altering it with chaos energy, altering his genes completely. Doing this to a living person would have unforeseen and possibly drastic consequences, but doing it to a soulless husk should be fine. This is not only to change their genetic structure and thus make sure they're their own people, but also to ensure they gain powerful quirks, as this was a requirement set by Mr. Midoriya himself. Another requirement set by Mr. Midoriya is that their power cannot be above something that people could realistically be born with. They must have only one quirk, and while these quirks should be extremely powerful, nothing so unbelievably powerful that it brings into question if they've been genetically altered. This is so the public doesn't suspect their true nature. The public must believe they are natural-born Japanese citizens who have no biological relation to Izuku Midoriya. They would simply be close confidants, that Mr. Midoriya made friends with at some point, and then entrusted the foundation to after his demise. Hopefully, we can naturally establish them in the public's mind, so everything will seem completely natural. Currently, we have already extracted Mr. Midoriya's vestige and turned it into remnant, but a few things are currently holding up the project. Firstly, the bodies will take some time to perfect. Second, and most pressing, is that we need to find a way to split a vestige in two, which also leads to the last point. We need to make sure these vestiges are complete people. Vestiges, when made into souls, are incomplete, and this can lead to problems. Fu being an example. Due to his soul being incomplete, it's led to numerous issues for him. Issues we'd rather not suffer through. As such, Dr. Murasaka's research has been fully approved, despite its off-putting nature. This may also be due to the fact that this research can also be used to complete Fu's incomplete soul. Project Ultra Orphanage. Mr. Midoriya is not satisfied with the state of orphanages worldwide. Many of them leave orphans in poor conditions, either from bad management due to malefactors, or simply lack of funding, among other issues. And so Mr. Midoriya simply decided to deal with this issue himself, by creating the ultimate orphanage. Using similar means to how we created Angel Island, Midoriya used the power of the Chaos Emerald to raise several large landmasses out of the ocean and stick them together. These landmasses were given support, and now form a large island that no longer needs the Chaos Emerald to support it. Thankfully. Once this was done, Mr. Midoriya quickly ordered the construction of this ultimate orphanage. Or rather, an orphanage city. I'm not exaggerating. Given that this will need to accommodate tens of millions, maybe even over 100 million orphans, and tens of millions of workers. Maybe more, this place needs to basically be a city. The structure will feature numerous smaller orphanage buildings, in what will be called the housing district. Then we will have the educational district, which will house schools and other buildings needed for the enrichment of young minds. After that will be the recreational district, filled to the brim with restaurants, arcades, stores, amusement parks, and anything that anyone could want to entertain themselves. With the obvious exception of adult entertainment, with a miscellaneous district for other things. And lastly, there is the administrative district at the center of the island. This is for all buildings relating to the governing, preservation, security, and enforcement of rules on the island, as well as other important functions. Although there is one more district that's technically part of the island, although it's really part of a smaller island, not connected to the main island, but is close by. The Juvenile Detention District, made to house children who commit serious crimes while on the island. Hopefully, it will be sparingly used, if at all. Although to be fair, it's still meant to be very nice. Going through all the main districts, there will be a train system that will take people to various stations around the island. These trains will be numerous and have plenty of rooms. Although it will also be heavily encouraged for people to ride bikes. Children of all ages will be taken in from all over the world and kept there until age 18, where they will be given the option to leave. If they leave, they will have access to Midoriya Foundation support, to help them find jobs and even assist them in getting into a college of their choosing. Should they choose to stay, they will be given the option of working on the island itself. Speaking of workers, there will be many people working all sorts of jobs on the island. From overseers who will be taking care of the children at home, to teachers, guards, shop owners, therapists, mechanics, and many, many, many more. And of course, all employees will be vetted using thorough, albeit invasive, means, and all employees directly involved with the children will be heavily monitored, and several inspections will be done on a bi-monthly basis. Speaking of vetting, this is an orphanage. People will be able to visit or do online visits and adopt children. Of course, the vetting and background checks will be just as thorough as they will be for the employees, and the adoption process will be both difficult and time-consuming. Of course, all facilities will be given access to the most cutting-edge technology and top-of-the-line amenities. Security will be top of the line, as it will have its own Midoriya Foundation army posted there, making it one of the most secure locations on Earth. And of course, all employees will be given generous pay. Naturally, this is going to cost a frankly ludicrous amount of money. So much so that any other company in the world would never be able to finance this. Most countries would not be able to finance this. It is only thanks to the Midoriya Foundation's ridiculous amount of wealth that this is possible, and even then it took a huge chunk out of our budget, especially when combined with other operations. Fortunately, since we stripped the entire island of resources before we started building, we were able to soften the financial blow ever so slightly. And since the Foundation's yearly income is, quite frankly, insane, and Mr. Midoriya has further plans to expand our sources of income, perhaps this is a good thing, as it provides a means to stop the Midoriya Foundation from hoarding all of the world's wealth. However, there are some obstacles in our way. Namely that the world governments are likely to object to us taking, literally, all of their orphans. Of course, the Japanese government won't have literally any problem whatsoever, as they are essentially subservient to the Midoriya Foundation. But other countries will likely move to prevent this from happening using whatever means possible. Naturally, Mr. Midoriya has no intention of letting this stop him. Using various Midoriya Foundation agents, proxies, and hired hands, Mr. Midoriya essentially plans to mass adopt, and then unadopt as many orphans as possible, placing them all in the care of this new ultra-orphanage. He plans to do all this in an overwhelming quick manner, so the governments won't have any time to react. Mr. Midoriya also plans on deploying several distractions, so the more troublesome governments will be even slower to react. Of course, there are many orphans on the street and not in orphanages, so we have many agents in place to simply take them away. Although this process will likely be slower due to potential witnesses, there is also less the governments can do about this. This process will be aided via the use of portal technology. Normally, for our warp gates to reach worldwide range, several relay points would need to be built in various countries, which has not been approved in most countries. However, by utilizing the Chaos Emerald, we can circumvent this issue temporarily. Of course, this is very illegal and would damage international relationships more than this whole operation already will by its nature. So secrecy is an absolute must. With this many agents and third parties working in tandem, keeping this under wraps will be difficult. But we have our ways. Those ways won't last forever, which is why construction must be quick, so we can begin the operation as soon as possible. Naturally, Mr. Midoriya has no intention of stopping our child gathering operations. Things will just be slower. And perhaps for force. While this may seem a bit insane, and it is almost certainly the most egregious and blatant abuse of power Mr. Midoriya will ever commit, it cannot be understated just how important this operation is. Not only will this greatly lessen the number of children who suffer in bad orphanages, children who suffer on the streets, and children who get adopted by bad parents, but it will also allow us to properly educate them, and ensure they don't develop into bigots. This is all for the sake of a better future. As such, the name of this ultra orphanage will be the Mirai Orphanage Island. Project Reincarnation. Project Reincarnation is the process of taking individuals who are deemed completely irredeemable, and giving them a completely fresh start. By using the power of fractals, we were able to create a powerful machine, known as the Chamber of Rebirth. Once someone enters the Chamber of Rebirth, your body will be bombarded with chaos energy from fractals, and rewritten on a cellular level. Your age will be returned to that of a newborn, and all previous memories will be completely deleted. Your genetic code will change at random, completely changing your appearance. Once the process has been finished, you will be a newborn baby, with no memory of who you once were, and completely unrecognizable. These newborns will then be sent to the Mirai Orphanage Island. While the process is fully ready to go, Mr. Midoriya is currently debating the ethics of such a process. Especially after someone referred to this as people recycling. Although there have already been selected candidates from the process, including imprisoned villains, Moonfish and Muscular. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX He and Achiko were sitting in his office, Achiko looking over the files Izuku had handed her, with wide, shocked eyes. "This is insane," Achiko said under her breath as she read through it. "This is all insane. I know. It's a lot," Izuku said, wearing a somber expression. "But I think it's the right call. I can make big changes in the world. For the better. But it requires some pretty extreme action on my part. And it's a slippery slope. Yeah. Oh my gosh." Achiko put down the folders and closed her eyes, taking a moment to breathe and process what she just read. Okay. One thing at a time. I don't like this successor thing. I really don't like it. But it's necessary. I can't burden Mom with this, none of the kids are ready obviously, and I don't think I could find someone else to take my place with something this important, Izuku explained. Can you think of anyone? I get it's necessary. Achiko sighed, before giving Izuku a sad, almost pleading look. I still don't like it though. It's just another one of those things that makes it feel like you don't value your life at all. Well. Self-preservation is still something I struggle with. Izuku laughed nervously. Achiko sighed and shook her head. Tell me about it. Sometimes I worry every time I take my eyes off you, you're gonna start putting yourself at risk again. Yeah, Izuku said, rubbing the back of his head. Hey, anyway, what about the other two projects? Well, your Ultra Orphanage is, I trust you on this. Achiko said as she rubbed her temples. It's insane sounding, and honestly, the fact that anyone can do something like this, mostly legally, is scary. But I've heard about what happens to orphans in this world. It's one of the reasons I'm so grateful for my parents. If this will really help those millions of kids, then I can't say it's wrong. If I know anything, it's that'll you do right by these kids. Izuku smiled, feeling a warm, relieving sensation fill him. Thank you. I swear I won't betray that trust. Achiko smiled back briefly before frowning again as she came to the last project. Project Reincarnation. I'm really not sure about this. I don't either, but I detest the thought of just condemning those people to their fate. Izuku said. I know all of them could have been better people if they were just given the right environment. Their stories are tragedies, and they end as tragedies. People celebrate their demise, never thinking about what could have been. I could give them a better life. I could give them a happy ending, but they'd lose everything that they were. And that's terrible. But everything that they were was awful. And it ruined their lives. Achiko finished Izuku's thought with a thoughtful and troubled expression. Gosh, neither option feels good. Yeah, although, when I look at Himiko, it makes this feel more right, Izuku admitted, still sounding unsure. She just looks so happy. And then I imagine the alternative. Her rotting in a cell forever, or being put to death. I forgot that Himiko was originally a villain. Achiko considered the girl a victim of bad parents and the worst of society. She lost her mind and became a murderer. And now, she was just a happy-go-lucky kid, living her best life. It's probably the reason Izuku came up with this idea. And it was very, very tempting to use that as justification for all this. In fact, they actually might do that. I think you should just shelve this idea for now, Achiko told him. This should be something you decide on once you're sure of yourself. And if you never are, maybe that's a sign. All right. If that's what you think, then I'll take your advice. Izuku agreed, looking both relieved and somewhat disappointed. Thank you for hearing me out. I worry about doing this alone. I'm afraid of making the wrong decision and hurting people. I know I should be stronger than this, and I can't rely on you forever, but why not? Achiko interrupted, giving Izuku a very serious look. Almost glaring at him, in a way that made Izuku flinch. Not because of any potential malice, but because of the obvious sadness and disappointment coming off of her. Why can't you rely on me? Why do you need to keep having to put everything on yourself? I'm not going anywhere. So just trust me like you're doing right now. Achiko, one day you're going to be the number one hero, Izuku said, looking at her sadly. You're going to be so busy. Do you really want to spend all your free time helping out me? You deserve better than that. Snap. In less than a second One for All came to life, and Achiko grabbed the table, threw it aside, and grabbed the couch Izuku was on, trapping him between her arms, and taking him completely off guard. You Ooka Let me show you how I want to spend my time. Achiko hissed. And then she lowered herself onto him, and their lips met. It was far from the romantic, fairy tale kiss you'd see in a book or TV show. It was rough and very one-sided, as Achiko poured both her affection and frustration for Izuku into it, making it very rough, and Izuku's brain had ceased to function, so he wasn't doing much of anything. Eventually, Achiko pulled back and took a breath, before looking back down at Izuku and pulling him up, using her quirk to lift him into the air. Listen here. Izuku Midoriya. You kind, pure-hearted, smart, incredibly talented, adorable man that I love. I love spending time with you. You make me happy. Not just you. Your entire family too. I love all of them. So don't try and tell me that one day I'm gonna up and leave you because I'm busy. You couldn't even get rid of me if you tried. I'm gonna be with you till the bitter end, you hear? So no more talking like that. Understood. IFWA Patakt. Izuku responded, his brain still trying to reboot and process what the heck just happened. Why yes. Good, Achiko said, the anger and frustration started to fade, and rationality returned. Achiko quickly realized what she just did and said, and her face started to turn red. Damn it all. This was not how I wanted to do this. I mean, I didn't really know how I wanted to do this, but not like this. Her courage slipping away, Achiko felt tempted to just apologize and run away, but that defeats the entire point of what she just did, and likely sends a negative message to Izuku that he did not need right now. Not to mention how it would confuse and mess up their relationship. No, there was only one way to go. Forward. And so Achiko grabbed hold of what remained of her courage. Yeah. I want to be by your side. No matter what. I'll do it as a friend, but maybe I could do it as more than a friend. Achiko asked sheepishly. If that's okay with you? Izuku was tempted to ask if he'd heard correctly, but given Achiko's whole speech, he felt somewhat confident that he had, and immediately after processing what she said, his immediate answer was absolutely. Chapter 282, Part of the Family. I knew it. I knew it. Shiruku shouted as she jumped up and down in glee. It finally happened. Well, I'm glad you're happy about it. Achiko giggled, looking at Shiruku's enthusiastic dance with a warmth growing in her heart. She'd felt very relieved after confessing to Izuku. Like releasing a breath she'd been holding for far too long, and threatened to asphyxiate her, but never quite did. So now she just felt good. There was still a bit of fear. Fear that she'd mess things up. Overstep boundaries, fail the people she wanted to help. But all of that was buried under a wave of sudden confidence, and a feeling of responsibility she had towards her new family. First things first, she had to tell everyone, and naturally, the first person she had to tell was Shiruku. Congratulations! Kano applauded, flying down after setting one of the dresses down on a hook on the wall. I'm so happy you two finally got together. Please take care of us and Mr. Midoriya. Or else. I will. I'll be the best mom I can be. Achiko blushed. She knew very well that dating Izuku essentially meant becoming a mom, and even though that thought made her feel a bit weird, she loved the kids just as much as she loved Izuku, so it wasn't that much of a problem. Oh, I'm so happy that you and Dad are finally official. Shiruku shouted as she leaped into Achiko's arms, giving her a surprise hug. Kano! Drop everything we need to make our mother a space-themed wedding dress. Oh, that sounds amazing. As always, your vision astounds me. Kano said with stars in her eyes. Wait, hang on a second. Achiko objected. We just got together. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. You two finally got together. Oh, I'm so happy for you. Fuku said, giving Achiko a warm smile. It's about time, Fu said as he continued what he was doing. Thanks, but what's going on here? Achiko asked. In front of her, Fu was tying Fuku down into her bed. Fuku was overworking herself again, so I decided to help her relax, Fu explained as he continued tying the knot on the rope. I'm not relaxed. I'm not relaxed at all. Fuku shouted as she went back to trying to squirm her way out of the ropes, to no avail. Come on, I have stuff to do. You have to rest. No one is going to be mad at you for taking care of yourself. And if they are, I'll talk with them. Fu said. Ms. Uraraka, please help me. Fuku begged. Achiko took a closer look at Fuku and saw some bags in her eyes, and some signs of stress. Nope, sorry, you're taking a break. Can't have you getting Izuku's bad habits. Rah! Yuna roared, seemingly in agreement as she got up onto Fuku's bed and laid on top of her. No! Fuku screamed in defeat, knowing she'd have no choice but to take the day off. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX sitting up from her seat at the library table and applauding. She had been leading a study group, composed of Ken, Otoko Kuki, Ko, Tenko, and Fuhai, but this was not an unwelcome interruption. Finally, Ken said, rolling his eyes, only for Nara to smack him in the back of the head. Ow! Don't be rude. Nara scolded, before turning back to Achiko. Sorry about that. I'm just happy you two are finally together. Both of you deserve happiness. And please make sure Mr. Midoriya doesn't destroy himself. Yeah, no way in hell I'm letting that happen, Achiko said with a firm voice. He's gonna start taking some more care of himself, whether he wants to or not. Can you get rid of my quirk? Kuki asked hurriedly. Mr. Midoriya won't do it, so can you? Mr. Midoriya can get rid of quirks? Tenko asked, his eyes widening. Ah. Your quirk was, amp. Right. That's. Achiko thought about it. Well, I'll have to talk with him about it. But I'm sorry, I can't make any promises. Kuki sighed and sank into his wheelchair, looking utterly dejected. Of course. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX giving her a big hug, which Achiko reciprocated. I love you, Mom. Yeah, Mom hugs. Kei cheered as she grabbed hold of Achiko's leg and hugged her from there. Group hug. Himiko said as she jumped onto Achiko from behind and hugged her neck. Oh. Okay, girls, I'm really happy you like me, but it's getting hard to move. Achiko said as Himiko hugged/strangled her. Goop hug. Sanson shouted as she dive-bombed them from the ceiling, knocking them all down to the ground, where she wrapped around and hugged them all. Do you need, Mom? Eri asked as she ran over to the pile of children Achiko was buried under. I'm fine, Achiko said, shaking her head with a fond smile on her face. Oh, okay, can I join in? Eri asked sheepishly. Of course, you can, Achiko said with an inviting smile. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Kiba shouted at the camera, standing in the center of a giant arena. Are you ready for a monumental day in the history of our great family? Oh boy, what is she doing now? A big announcement. Tell us, Lady Kiba, tell us. The camera moved over to show Achiko, and Kiba continued talking. Achiko Uraraka courted our beloved caretaker, and has become our new mother. Hi. Achiko waved at the camera nervously. Oh my god. It happened. Has the Empress been crowned? Congrats, caretaker. Hopefully, your relationship goes better than mine. Normies explode. Alien Queen, finally. 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 But of course, we're just going to let her court our father so easily. If she wants the right to stand by his side, she must go through the ultimate trial. Kiba shouted before the camera zoomed back, revealing Hinata, Lu, Seikyo, Netsu, and the Cerberus sisters. She must battle our guardians of darkness. Oh shit. Well, she dead. Kiba wants her daddy to stay single. This fight gonna be insane. Rip Mama Midoriya. Alien Queen, yikes. Have fun, Uraraka. Do we really have to do this? Achiko asked, looking a bit nervous. Kiba made her way over to the other kids. Of course. Although we all know and love you, dear Achiko, these things must be done with ceremony. No exceptions. Whatever my lady decrees. Hinata said, jumping into the air, before turning into a sword and landing in Kiba's hand. We're not gonna give our brother to you just because we like ya, Yaba said as she cracked her knuckles. Like any good thing in life, you gotta fight for it. I just want to see how interesting this battle will be, Ji said nonchalantly. Sorry, Ms. Achiko. Inu bowed her head. I just didn't want people thinking I wasn't part of the strongest children here, Seikyo explained casually. And I just want to fight. Netsu said with a big excited grin on his face. Ditto, Lu said, going for a more, try hard edgy, crossing your arms pose. Achiko shook her head and sighed. Well, if that's how it's gotta be. Suddenly her body exploded with power as One for All activated at 50%, pink lightning rippling off her body and everyone could feel strength radiating from her. "Bring it on, kids," Achiko said, getting ready to fight. "Mama's not backing down. Don't give up. Midoriya needs a strong woman." Kiba smirked. "Let's begin." Boom! Immediately Achiko rushed at Kiba with explosive speed, her hand reached out to try and touch her. Kiba swung her sword in front of her, but Achiko jumped over her attack, flipping over her, before shooting a finger flick to change her momentum and send her at Kiba. Achiko's hand just barely didn't reach Kiba, as Seikyo activated her telekinesis, and stopped her in midair. Seikyo then threw her to the left, slamming her into the wall. Netsu unleashed a powerful fire blast at her, while Lu shot out chaos arrows. Achiko flexed her entire body, breaking the telekinesis barrier, and then swiftly dodging Netsu's fire blast, and then bringing up her arms, covering them with Black Whip to block the arrows. "You ready?" Yaba asked her sisters. All of them touched their chokers, and in a flash of blue light, they were fused into Cerberus. Cerberus rushed at Achiko and lunged at her. Achiko ducked under the lunge, and punched Cerberus in the gut, knocking the wind out of her, before Achiko grabbed her and tossed her at Lu, who stopped firing and teleported out of the way to dodge. Netsu continued to fire fireballs at Achiko, which she easily dodged. However, she was suddenly snared by her own shadow. Kiba used it to try and keep her in place, and Seikyo activated her telekinesis to further restrain her, and then Netsu started charging a blast. Growling. 65%. Achiko shouted as she upped One for All's power, and burst out Seikyo's telekinesis, and then Kiba's shadow binding shortly after. Ha! Netsu unleashed a powerful wave of fire at Achiko, hoping to catch her just before she moved, but Achiko leapt to the left, dodging the attack. Only for Lu to teleport in front of her, and unleash a point-blank chaos javelin right into her face, sending her flying back towards Netsu's attack. Achiko turned and looked at herself heading right towards Netsu's fire. She then reached behind her, and kaboom! By activating Implosion, she set off a big explosion behind her, propelling her forward, towards Lu, who she tackled into the side of the Colosseum, as he was too shocked to teleport out of the way. Achiko slammed him into the wall, breaking it apart, and embedding Lu in it. She lowered her One for All percentage and got ready to punch Lu, but the boy finally regained his senses and teleported away just before Achiko's fist hit his face, causing her to smash the side of the arena instead, shattering the wall further. Netsu shot a bunch of fireballs at her from behind, and Achiko dodged each one, before touching the ground, and then lifting up a massive chunk of the ground, and throwing it at Netsu. Kiba jumped in front of the attack, and sliced that chunk of ground in half, before rushing at Achiko. Achiko prepared to fight her off, when she heard Lu teleport behind her, with chaos javelins in his hands. He threw them at her, almost point blank, but Achiko was just too fast and jumped backward, dodging the attacks which were now aimed at Kiba. Kiba's eyes widened and she tried to jump to the side. However, her forward momentum was too great, and she just ended up tripping and being hit by both of the javelins, which exploded on impact. Hoo-ah! Lu shouted as Achiko flicked air at him, which exploded on contact, hitting him in the back of the head and sending him flying. "Looks like it worked." Achiko smiled. By using Implosion, she could make the air in front of her explosive, then flick it towards her opponent, and detonate it on impact, essentially turning her fingers into rocket launchers. Achiko flipped and landed on her feet, and immediately Seikyo shot an energy beam at her from above, making her jump back to dodge it. Then Achiko started rapidly dashing around the arena, Seikyo trying to follow with her eyes, but failing, completely losing Achiko in seconds. Until suddenly, she felt Achiko's hand on the back of her head. Slam! Immediately Seikyo plummeted down, hitting the ground so hard she made a massive crater, and kicked up dust all over the arena. From the dust cloud, Kiba flew out, wings spread and sword pointed at Achiko, who was falling towards her. Achiko shot out Black Whip and wrapped it around Kiba's sword, forcibly moving it to the side, as she kneed Kiba in the face, sending her crashing back down. Lady Kiba. Hinata immediately tried to struggle out of Achiko's grip and head back to Kiba, but she was too strong. Achiko grabbed Hinata by the handle, and as soon as she hit the ground, she stabbed Hinata into the ground, burying everything but her hilt. Then she increased its weight for good measure. Cerberus ran in and tried to attack her with claw strikes, but Achiko dodged 2 strikes, before delivering a palm strike to her chest, causing blood to fly from her mouth before she immediately slammed into the ground due to her gravity having increased. Lu teleported back in, appearing right next to Seikyo in her crater, as he looked over the battle. Both Seikyo and Cerberus were pinned down. Kiba was trying to little avail to pull Hinata out of the ground, meaning Netsu was currently fighting Achiko alone, firing fireballs at her which she easily dodged. Yeah, that wasn't gonna last long. Lu himself was pretty rattled, still dizzy from that explosion to the back of his head. And he likely wasn't gonna be taking too many more hits. He looked at Seikyo. Alright, well let's see if this works. Chaos Eyes. Suddenly, the world went dark. Lu could see nothing, except for the glows of a few auras around him. Chaos Eyes. An ability that allowed him to see chaos energy more directly. Problem was, right now he could only see chaos energy. And while everything technically derived from chaos energy, what Lu could see was closer to the pure stuff. Like seeing quirks and their effects. For example, Lu could see Seikyo's chaos energy, a pitch-black energy in her shape, which was surrounded by a pink aura. This pink aura was the effect of Achiko's quirk and was causing the increase in gravity. Alright, let's see if I can get rid of this, Lu said to himself as he put his hand on Seikyo's head. Lu felt Achiko's energy. It was heavy, powerful, and very thoroughly stuck onto Seikyo. This was gonna be a tough one. Lu took his hand off of her, took off his restrictor rings, and then put his hand back on her. Okay, time to get rid of Dash. Slam! Suddenly Lu felt a big blow to the side of his head, and he was knocked into the side of the crater, his chaos eyes deactivating, although he found he still couldn't see very well because the world was spinning. Since Lu had been too busy trying to undo the increased gravity on Seikyo, he didn't notice that Achiko had already dealt with Netsu, slamming him in the face with Black Whip, and sending him into the side of the arena. Then she noticed Lu was distracted, and kicked him in the side of the head. Ow wow! Lu groaned as he simply lay on the side of the crater, pretty much defeated. Achiko jumped out of the crater and looked at Kiba, who had finally given up on pulling out Hinata. Sorry my loyal partner, but I must finish this fight without you for now. Kiba sighed, looking at Hinata sadly. I'm sorry Lady Kiba. I have failed you. Hinata sobbed. No, I have failed you. But sit tight, I will end this fight, and release your seal. Kiba swore, before turning to face Achiko. You've done well so far, but your luck ends here. Come. And meet your doom. Achiko charged at her, her hand outstretched and ready to activate her quirk once again, but as she reached Kiba, shadows came up, and wrapped around Achiko's hands, making shadow gloves. Kiba jumped forward and tried to punch Achiko in the face, but Achiko tilted her head to the side, and then she headbutted Kiba in the side of the head, sending her flying, but not very far, because Achiko grabbed her leg and slammed her into the ground so hard the entire arena shook. Achiko raised her foot and tried to stomp Kiba's torso, but Kiba managed to grab her foot and barely managed to keep it from slamming into her, struggling to hold it up. The shadows popped up and tried to grab Achiko, but suddenly Achiko's body exploded with brilliant light, as she activated Bright, causing the shadows to vanish. Kiba closed her eyes and hissed. Normally when she used her quirk and solidified shadows, it made them resistant to light, but if there was a super bright light source, then they would still fade away. Achiko then raised her leg up, taking Kiba with it as she had still been holding onto Achiko's foot. Saturn! Achiko shouted as she raised her foot over her head, with Kiba still on it, and she raised her power to 65%. Smash! Achiko slammed Kiba into the ground. The impact was so great it caused the entire sim room to shake, a massive shockwave and air exploded from the epicenter, causing the already damaged walls of the arena to completely collapse and fall, and the wind to rise up and swirl like a tornado. When the dust settled, the entire arena had been turned into one massive crater, with Kiba and Achiko at the center, with Achiko standing over her, dazed and out of it. Kiba. So, safe to say I passed? Achiko asked as she released her quirks effects on everyone. Holy shit! What the fuck is with this power? Are those multiple quirks? The Midoriya Foundation is fucking scary. So we all agree that Caretaker is the bottom in the relationship, right? I don't know, he is the kind of guy to conquer the impossible. How do people see this and think, yeah, I wanna fuck those guys? I want that smoke. Stupidity is more blinding than actual blindness. They didn't even touch her. Is this child abuse? The future's looking bright with her around. Chapter 283, Changes. Alright, that's everything. Achiko breathed a sigh of relief as she finally finished boxing up all her stuff, gathering it in the living room. It didn't take long, mostly because she didn't have all that much stuff, and her parents' help meant they were done in just a couple of hours. Listen, I support your relationship and all that, but ain't y'all moving a bit too fast? Her father asked. Moving in together right after confessing and all? Shouldn't you wait like a year, something? Papa, it's fine. Izuku needs the support, and I want to be there for the kids when they need me. Achiko explained. And if I leave Izuku alone, he might try to do everything on his own again. You definitely got yourself an interesting catch, sweetheart. Her mother said, smiling fondly. I'm so proud that you finally confessed. My baby's growing up so fast. You even gave us grandkids already. Don't remind me. Achiko's father said, rubbing his temples as he tried not to think about that. You know, you two could come with me if you want. Achiko offered / pleaded, almost desperately. You'd be closer to your work. There's lots of stuff so you'll never get bored, and it's a lot safer. The one legitimate hang-up Achiko had about dating Izuku was that it basically put a massive target on her entire family. Of course Izuku spared no expense in their protection. Moving them to a more secure house, and surrounding them with Midoriya Foundation guards. He'd even moved Protoman there to act as the head bodyguard. But Achiko would have still liked to have them close by. Darling, much as we'd love to have you close by all the time, we can't impose on Izuku no more than we already have. Mr. Uraraka told her. Don't be like that, Papa, Izuku won't mind. Achiko argued with a pout. I'm sure he won't. Or at least he'll act like he don't. But trust me, sweetheart, no one likes having their girlfriend's parents sticking around. Mr. Uraraka shuddered. And as a man, I can't do that to him. Honey, my parents weren't that bad. Mrs. Uraraka said, doing some pouting herself for a moment, before turning her attention back to her daughter. But really, dear, we'll be fine. Suddenly, a portal opened, and Mina came out. Hey, Shako. Congrats on finally confessing. You have to tell me the details later. Oh, and hey Mr. and Mrs. Uraraka. Nice to see ya again. Hello Mina, are you gonna be helping us move? Mrs. Uraraka asked. I mean yeah, but with Oka's quirk does she really need much help? Mina asked. I'm pretty much just here to supervise. And then get some details afterward. Come on, let's go. Achiko shook her head. Oh, Mina. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Ah. I didn't know, how much I needed this. Achiko added as she made similar sounds. I really hope none of those kids hear them from here. One of the masseuses said as they continued the massage. I really hope none of those kids know what these sounds could mean. The other masseuse sighed. Given Izuku's general lack of self-care, Achiko suggested he get a massage to help with the various aches in his body. Izuku agreed on the condition that Achiko also got a massage. Of course, given the security risk, they obviously didn't go out somewhere to have it done, rather they invited two, heavily screened and monitored, masseuses and had it done in Izuku's room. Let's just say that after the two finished it, Izuku and Achiko decided this would be a more common thing. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX So these are level 20.p.cs, Achiko said as she looked at the profiles with a grimace. These quirks are not great, I know. Izuku sighed, remembering how he felt when he first read through those and grimacing. You can see why they needed to be contained. Yeah, well, at least we can get rid of those quirks and get them out of there, Achiko said as she took her new stamp and got ready to approve a quirk removal. Wait. Izuku said, quickly grabbing her hand to stop her. Why, you can't just approve of it just like that. We could still find alternatives. Izuku, the paper says there is no currently available technology to allow him to live outside of confinement. Achiko pointed out. And that they don't win or if such technology will be developed. That's true, but I'm sure if I told the lab to take care of it they could find something eventually. Izuku argued. The lab already has way too many projects to work on. Achiko pointed out. I took a look at the list of projects they had on the back burner, and it took me over an hour just scrolling through them. And when is eventually? After their childhoods are already done, spent in a metal box away from their friends and family? Izuku stopped and tried to think of a counter-argument. Only to come up empty. Achiko sighed as she set down the paper and the stamp. After talking to Kuki, I had my suspensions. But now I'm pretty sure I know what's happening. Izuku, your bias against quirklessness affects your judgment. Okay, with Kuki, I have a real reason. He doesn't need to lose his quirk, he can live just fine the way he is. Izuku argued, almost desperately, but Achiko could hear the doubt in his voice. It lacked the conviction Izuku normally had when he was sure of himself. In a wheelchair? Izuku, he can barely move. Achiko said, almost exasperated. And that's not even mentioning how much he obviously hates living like this. That's why we're working on a suit that'll let him move around normally. Izuku explained, sweating quite a bit now. Sure, it's not done yet, but do you know when it will be done? Achiko asked in a demanding tone. Would that even be comfortable enough to move in? Izuku stopped once again. No, but So then he'd be better off quirkless. Achiko shouted. He's not using his quirk for anything, he just wants to live a normal life. Or at least as close to a normal life as he can get. And he can't do that as a quirkless person. Izuku yelled back. You don't know what it's like. I don't. But you don't know what it's like to be strapped in a chair, unable to move for your entire life. Achiko countered. Or what it's like to be trapped in a room, without being able to see your family. Izuku once more went silent. And let's say that someday, years in the future, you actually do find some way to let them live in society with their quirks. What happens to all that anger, frustration, and hatred that's been building up inside of them this whole time? Achiko asked. Izuku recoiled as if he'd been stuck, as his eyes went wide. Oh no. Yeah, at least some of them are probably going to become villains because they were locked up against their will for most of their lives. Achiko pointed out. A lot of them might even target our family because of that. Is that really what you want? No, I hate this. Izuku admitted, finally giving up and taking a seat. I hate this. All of this just feels wrong. I know, Achiko said, putting the papers down, getting up, and embracing her boyfriend. But we have to make these decisions as objectively as we can. Maybe you should leave this to me and Shoal. You do enough as it is already. No. I have to do this. Izuku sighed, pulling himself together. And you're right, I need to stop making up excuses and do the right thing, thank you. Achiko held him closer. You're welcome. And don't go beating yourself up. This stuff happens to the best of us. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Izuku's bed. She didn't know, but this felt right. Achiko was always a hugger, and Izuku was very much a sucker for physical affection. So maybe that's why they jumped to this so quickly. Or maybe it was just because Achiko was determined to spoil Izuku as much as she could. She wanted to make Izuku's life easier, like he deserved. Suddenly the door was kicked open, revealing Himiko. Cuddles. I want Cuddles. Of course. Come here. Achiko said, moving aside a bit to make room between them. Himiko leaped onto the bed, crawled in between them, and snuggled up to them both. Achiko looked down at the little girl who was smiling up at them. It made her so happy inside. But not so deep down, she also felt a sliver of guilt. Achiko knew she'd never ask for Himiko to be turned back. She simply couldn't bear the thought of turning this adorable, sweet little girl into a murderous psychopath. She imagined herself fighting her. Fighting Himiko Toga. Trying her hardest to get through to her, to convince her to look past all the hardships she'd been put through, and do the right thing. She'd also imagine herself failing. And having to put her in prison for the rest of her life. Or worse. Being forced to take her life. Just the thought of it made her shiver, and her stomach turn. No. She wouldn't allow that. She'd keep her as a child, and raise her better than her terrible parents ever could. And yet, despite her resolve, despite her fears of the alternative, that feeling of guilt didn't go away. She wondered if it ever would. Regardless, her mission didn't change. And she'd start by giving her lots and lots of hugs. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 53. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.